Don't trip, don't trip. We have technical errors this week. We're trying to figure out new
That's
equipment,
right.
guys. So, there we go. The J&J. What the heck is going on?
We're having more technical errors. Oh, well. You gotta love computers.
Okay, well, you know what? We're not gonna have an intro this week, so whatever. I don't know what's going on with my computer.
Is this where I take my glasses off now?
I guess you take your glasses off, man.
Because it's, what was it that they were throwing them out or throwing them overboard?
I don't know, but I'm pressing play on the computer and it's not playing. So welcome to J&J Podcast with
There
your
you
hosts,
go.
John and John.
All right, we're back.
We're back. We're excited for another week of craziness and talking with our viewers and our followers. Once again, we appreciate everyone who follows us. Please, once you're done listening to this, like us, follow us, share us, do everything to help us blow up this podcast because me and John want this thing to get big one day. So,
and please let us know if there's something you want to talk about too.
Yeah, because we've been asking every week and no one has still said anything, which I understand, but
it's like crickets.
If one person, we get a lot of likes and stuff, but if we get one person who wants us to talk about a topic, we're going to do it with you guys. So
that's right.
Anyways, we don't have an intro this week, I guess. We don't have an outro this week, but we're just going to jump in, John.
So, there you go.
How's your week, man?
My week was okay. Let's see. So are the pools open or are they still closed?
No, so our pool, they were only open on Sunday, and Sunday got actually pretty warm towards the end of the day.
Yeah.
But most pools don't open above 70 degrees, and it's extremely annoying right now because what it's May 29th and it's 60.
All the kids are out of school,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, and I think it got like to 66 degrees most of the week.
Yeah.
Right? Today got to like 71, and tomorrow it's supposed to be 65 again.
So I refuse to turn on my heat, even though it was 43 degrees.
Me too, yeah.
I just turned on a space heater and let it ride.
I know. But apparently next week it's supposed to get hot. So we're supposed to switch finally back to the 80s. But man, I'll tell you what, apparently there's some fires coming down from Canada, and that's affecting the temperatures and stuff like that too. So,
oh yeah, that's true.
So this weekend, if you smell smoke or you see a lot of smog in the area, it's just because there's Canada fires again. Remember like 2 years ago how bad those got?
Oh yeah. How long did that last time?
It was like all summer, remember?
That's true.
I remember going to work and you could like taste the fire in your mouth. That was crazy.
Yeah. So Canada, welcome. Again.
No comment.
Okay. We won't go there.
What else, man? Anything else happened this week with you?
Not really. I mean, I really can't think anything.
Okay.
Yeah. Other than the cold and waiting for summer to come.
Yeah, me and you both, man. Knox, my son, he finished first grade, and that was real emotional today. And then my other little guy, he's gonna be starting kindergarten, so he's done with preschool. So it's just crazy how fast that happens. So, but other than that, no, nothing new in my world this week either, man. So.
Yeah. Other than the NBA, but who knows what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, you and I aren't big NBA guys.
I mean, if you talk NFL, we're good.
We're good or at college, but I mean, I'm a Lakers fan. I was a Kobe fan, let's be honest. But I mean, with the NBA right now, I mean, Oklahoma City Thunder, crazy to think that they made the finals. Like how good that squad
was, yeah.
Honestly. Because if you think about it, I think like 10 years ago, you had Kevin Durant, Jason Harding, and it's embarrassing. I can't. Russell Westbrook all in a team, and they didn't even make it past like the first round or second round.
Oh wow!
But now this Thunder team completely stacked, destroying everybody, and then potentially you talking about the Eastern Conference Finals, the Pacers and the Knicks right now.
Oh, I know.
And the Pacers are quietly winning that series 3-1, and potentially could take it to the finals tonight.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I'm an Ohio boy. Don't get, like I said, I'm a Lakers fan, but I'll be rooting for the Pacers. I don't know about you.
Oh, I would go for the Pacers too.
So, I know you're not into basketball, anyways.
No, I'm in.
And don't worry, John. Only like I think 13 Sundays from now, maybe 12. No, I think 10 Sundays until the NFL season.
So August.
We're getting there too, man.
Yeah, so August would be the preseason.
Yeah.
And then see how everybody that they drafted do.
Yeah, man. So, anyways. Great catching up real quick in the week. We're going to continue on talking about decision making tonight, John, and take it away, man.
All right. So in decision making, like I gave an example of, I think if you listen to my last one, it was talking about me making decisions on fixing the Toyota van that was my dad's and how much money I wanted to put into it. It had 250,000 miles on it, and it was kind of like, okay, is it going to die on me if I put this money into it? So I took it to a place, and they said, well, let's prioritize everything, which helped me a lot, because a lot of times in decision making, it's always good to prioritize, things that's going on. Um, and so we make thousands of decisions every day. Most are small, some are big. Even small decisions add up, and it deals with our mindset and relationships, business. You're making decisions every day. You're making decisions. You're making decisions. Do I want to get up, go to work, and make some money and get a paycheck so I can put food on the table? Or you can stay in bed, make that decision, and you don't get paid, and you do not have food on the table. So that could be a big decision. Other ones are, well, you know what? There's so much traffic out there. I got up late, so I'm sometimes late to work. So at that point, do you want to get up earlier the next time so that your boss doesn't say, "Hey, you've been late again"? And so that could be some. And then rushing into making decisions and feeling the pressure of making decisions. Like case in point, when I did get my Toyota fixed and the van fixed, so it's still running. Um, and Toyota is built on a Lexus mainframe, so you can drive those things into the ground. So that was another decision, but it was kind of like I'm not going to rush into this decision because it's a lot of money that I would have to spend to get this fixed. So those are just examples of real quick big decisions, small decisions on maybe what to eat, um, how healthy you're going to be. And so I think staying on the objective in making decisions is emotional. Some decisions can be emotional, some can be personal, and you don't want your emotions and your personal to get in the way of making decisions because that can be very easy to do. Case in point of when I was making my decision about my Toyota van, it used to be my dad's. And so it was kind of like, if I get rid of that van, that's kind of like another death in my family. My dad's no longer with me. So it's kind of like maybe my decision was based on keeping my dad alive because he drove that van. Maybe that was emotional and maybe it was personal. But as it worked out, it's still working, which is good. And then write down the pros and cons, and I really had to write those things down. Okay, what's wrong with it? Am I thinking emotional? Am I thinking personal? What's the pros and cons about fixing it? What's the bad part or negative part about fixing it? So there's all decisions, and that's just an example for me, but I'm sure in everyday life, in your family, in your business, in your church, in your ministry, you're always making decisions. Um, and so it's very important. So
Real quick, let me stay on that with you, John. How easy do you think it is to make emotional decisions?
it's not easy at all because a lot of times it gets involved with, and sometimes when you make it emotional, um, you may make a wrong decision because you're not thinking clearly.
Or you might regret it later on, right?
Exactly.
So, do you think a lot of people though nowadays make a lot of emotional decisions comparison to making a objective decision?
I think a lot of it is built on emotions.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and I think that a lot of times, I mean, you can't take the emotional or personal side out of it. But when you're making bigger purchases, like buying a car, buying a house,
Yeah.
you got to figure out, hey, is it the right thing to do? Is it the right thing to do now? I know Clark Howard always says, leave $1,000 in your savings for emergency. Um, but it also depends on, okay, do I sink money into something that all I'm doing is sinking money into it? And that could be a house, that could be a car, that could be whatever. So I think even in business, looking for jobs, I think those are sometimes we build on. I haven't found a job in 6 months, but this job opportunity came through, so I think I'll take it
Yeah.
without really understanding what is your overturn rate. How do they treat the employees? How long have they been around? Do your homework rather than is it right decision for you? Do the hours work for you? So those are some decisions that you think objectively, but then it's kind of like emotionally, it's kind of like, hey, I gotta pay bills, so I gotta take whatever I can.
Yeah, and just stay on this for one more second before we jump to the next one. I think when it comes to objective decision making, especially when you have other people involved,
Yeah,
when you suggested writing pros and cons down, I think that's really important to remember
yeah,
because sometimes, like, if you're trying to make a decision, and let's say your best friend's involved
mm-hmm,
and like your mortal enemy,
yeah,
but you have to make the best decision for a business or something like that,
yeah,
you have to take the friendships out, you have to take the hatred out,
yep,
you have to take all the stuff out,
yep,
and you have to sit there. You have to make an objective decision.
mm-hmm,
And a lot of people would probably, at least in my experience, I've seen a lot of people make an emotional or personal decision instead of making an objective decision. So I think you made a really good point about writing down pros and cons, um, especially in those kind of scenarios, because you always want to do what's best for you personally,
right,
but if it's a business decision, you always want to do what's best for the business.
exactly, yep,
You always want to do what's best for the business. And I think that takes time when you're younger to realize that sometimes, because sometimes I know I'm going kind of off topic for a second, but like sometimes we always want to do what's best for us.
mm-hmm.
But sometimes that objective decision, you got to pull yourself out, man. You got to do what's best for the path forward for everybody and not just you, you know?
So a lot of times in business, and not all the time, but there are guidelines that you can go by when making decisions.
Yeah.
However, when you're making decisions personally or for your family, and I'll throw this over to you, how can you think objectively rather than in taking the emotional and the personal out of it?
Yeah. And this goes to the next topic, and this is communication clearly. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to individuals, it's very important to explain your reasoning and have clear communication. You don't want to be an indecisive manner with people that are around you because nothing frustrates a group of people more than when I say one thing, I'm going to go in this direction, and then
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes later, I'm going to go in that direction.
Yeah.
Well, then 10 minutes later, you know what? I want to go in this direction.
Right.
So when it comes to people and clear communication, you want to make sure your decision's ready to go and you have to stand behind it.
Right.
Whether you fall on your face or not.
Yeah.
Right? That was your decision. You wrote your pros and cons down. And then you have to make sure you communicate that very clearly to individuals, right?
Yeah.
And you always want to make sure you listen to individuals. I remember you taught me this a couple
Yeah.
of years ago, and I've always done this now. And you always listen to other individuals and then you repeat it back to them.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're making big decisions, you want to make sure you're doing clear communications that doesn't confuse people.
Right.
So like when you and I do podcasts,
Yeah.
we always make sure we're having clear communication so we're not in here just being chaotic.
Right.
Like our first episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
know what I mean? So I think when you're doing a decision making objectively and you're doing communication clearly, you just have to be clear. You have to stand behind your decision. You know what I mean? And like that's jumpy. Like, don't you feel like you have to be decisive?
You have to be, and I will say, go one step further. If you make a decision, own it. Okay, because a lot of people do the blame game and they don't own it. Even businesses, they do not own when they make a bad decision.
Yeah.
But you know what? You learn from it, and but own it. But there's no shame in, okay, I made a bad decision, but what can I learn from it? But one of my pet peeves is when somebody makes a decision and they don't own it.
What do
They
you mean
just,
by that? Like, they make a decision and like they uh they go back on their word kind of thing?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a verse in the Bible that basically talks about that decision making. It talks, I believe, in Proverbs or somewhere, that basically says that, um, it's kind of like the waves of the sea,
Yep.
tossed to and from, and you never know where it's going to go. And a double minded man is unstable in all his ways, which is very important because the thing in it I don't like is all of a sudden somebody that is kind of like, okay, yeah, I think we should do this. Now let's talk about it 3 more times before we actually implement it.
Yeah. So do you think when you're being decisive, you shouldn't also get stuck with overthinking?
Oh my gosh, overthinking is, I think that's like a devil's tool
Yeah.
because you can get so wrapped up in overthinking that you overthink yourself out of the decision.
Yeah.
Um, Case in point, for example, when we were doing this podcast, I talked to John, we communicated, we were both on the same page, and it was kind of like, okay, when we going to start? And I said, well, I've already got this stuff coming from Amazon, so
Yeah.
we can start as soon as this stuff comes.
And we kept pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back.
And finally, I just pulled the trigger, or we both pulled the trigger, and said, this is when we're going to do it, and held each other accountable. And then got the equipment to bring it in here and say, I didn't buy this equipment just to sit here and get dust.
Yeah, I agree, man.
So
Oh, okay. So we both agreed communicating clearly. We both agreed being decisive. Um, I think learning from your mistakes is very important, though,
mm-hmm.
because a lot of people they go after like they make an objective decision and they might fall flat on their face.
Right,
That's the greatest thing that can happen to you, though,
exactly.
in my opinion,
Yeah,
because you learn from your failures, right?
yeah,
Wayne Gretzky,
right.
you don't you miss the 100% shots you don't take. And I think it's okay that sometimes if you make an objective decision and it's the wrong call, I think it's important you take ownership
Yep,
and not blame others,
right.
right? And I think it's also when you kind of fail, I'm going to use the word fail, you need to reflect and you need to learn from that situation. I've making so many decisions in my life and I
Yeah,
have failed so many times, but it's made me stronger and stronger and made me
exactly.
as more mature the individual that I am today. You know what I mean? Like 10 years ago, if I was a recruiting manager, I couldn't make the decisions and confidence that I have today because I know how I failed in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know how to be objective nowadays to be more successful because I failed then,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's always important. It's okay to fail, and you're always gonna learn from your mistakes, And like John, like, have you ever learned from your mistakes and stuff that's happened to you?
Oh, many of times. In fact, there's a good book out there called by John Maxwell, and he talks about making decisions and fear of failure. Because a lot of times, what happens, Steve Harvey talks about that, a fear to failure, but where would Steve Harvey be in everything that he does if he said, well, I screwed up, so I guess I'm going to stop, you know? But he's very successful. John Maxwell is very successful in the business world and also in church ministry as well. But it's okay to fail, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But you cannot have fear in making decisions and possibly failing. Tyler Perry is another one. I mean, all these people are successful, but you know what? They just didn't wake up one day and everything was successful. They learned through the process, talked to other people, had other mentors in their life that they could rely on, that they could trust, that would tell them what they need to hear rather than what they want to hear. Because the biggest thing, and I know we've talked about this before, is I'd hate to go to John and say, "This is what I'm dealing with," blah blah blah, and he's like, "It's okay, it's okay," and he agrees with me. I'd rather have John say, "Okay, let's put the big pants on now. Okay, let's learn from it. What did you learn from it? And let's go ahead and keep moving forward." Because, and that's the key thing, is move forward,
Yeah.
move forward.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it's important to, and I live by this honestly. Is I always remind myself what worked, right? What didn't work.
yeah,
That's very important. And then what will I do differently next time? You know what I mean?
right.
And anytime people always come to me is like I've had a lot of youth come through me through a lot of years, but I always tell them no matter the situation, stay positive. And like
Mm-hmm.
you said earlier, don't let the negative thoughts run through your mind
Yeah.
and let you get in this hole of anxiety and fear and doubt and all this other stuff that can just like ruin everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
jumping back kind of to the beginning of decision making, I would sit and dwell and reflect and freak out for days about decisions I used to make.
Yeah.
And like I'll let it ruin me.
Oh
You
yeah.
don't want that as an individual. If you want to be a successful individual in the business world or be confident with your friends and other individuals, you gotta stand with your decisions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're gonna fall on your face, like I said. You're gonna learn from your mistakes, but you gotta be confident in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, it's always important to ask what worked, what didn't, and what will I do differently. I think going back to using simple tools like you said, John, at the beginning, pros and cons, man. That list has helped me
Yeah.
so many times in my life. It has helped Sarah and I making decisions in our marriage, like trips and like big decisions, stuff like that. I think it's huge to have that. I also think instead of like reflecting for days and days upon end, and my mom taught me this growing up, is the 10-10-10 rule. So let's say you make a decision, a big decision, comparison to a small decision. Let's say you make a very tiny decision,
Mm-hmm.
but you reflect on it for days upon days, right?
Yeah.
I think it's important to take a second and say, is this going to affect me in 10 minutes from now, 10 months from now, or 10 years from now?
Mm-hmm.
And I always took that advice to a T. Like if I upset a friend or something like that, like, is this going to matter 10 years from now kind of thing? You know what I mean?
Right.
Is this small decision that I just screwed up on, is it going to affect me 10 years from now? No, it's not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, if you do something crazy like go to jail, something illegal,
Oh yeah.
that's going to affect you 10 years from now. But you just sometimes in life, you got to make quick, decisive decisions. You know your gut better than anybody else,
Mm-hmm.
and you just have to be confident in yourself.
Right.
And I think that's how you can be successful in your career and in life. You know what I mean? And putting yourself around positive individuals, but people who hold you accountable, like you just said with you and
Right.
I, our friendship. Like we're not gonna sit here and be like, "Oh, it's okay, John, you
Right.
did okay." No, we're gonna call each other out.
Right.
That's kind of like our whole friend groups. That we have. Like
Uh-huh.
we are not afraid to call each other out.
No.
So
And you got to, and that's really what a true friend is. But the thing that I would always hate, I go into businesses, and we would have a meeting on a meeting on a meeting to talk about the same agenda that we just talked about at the last meeting, that we only got 2 bullet points done, but there was no implementation. So what I did when I worked for a company is I would send out the meeting minutes, and I would say, these are decisions that we've already done.
mhm.
Let's not rehash it. Okay. You guys can all read an email. You can read an outline, and let's go into the meeting to make decisions so that we can implement it, so that we don't have nothing accomplished and we're not meeting our deadlines. And that's the thing. Sometimes we don't meet our deadlines because we talk them, we talk to them, we talk to death about them. I mean, we
So
keep talking about it, and it's kind of like, okay, we've talked about this 3 meetings now. Why aren't we implementing stuff now?
yeah, let's hit, let's
The deadline is a deadline.
let's close this baby out and move on to the next thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think the biggest takeaways from the last couple episodes about decision making is pros and cons list. I think that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Be confident in yourself. What did I do this time? What can I do differently? And how can I be successful in the future? and then like the 10-10-10 rule.
Yep.
Um,
Stop overthinking.
Stop overthinking, because John and I get people who come to us all the time and ask us for advice, and me and John aren't perfect.
Right.
We've been in their shoes before.
Right.
I still overthink stuff, but we understand decision making, how to be kind of successful nowadays, and we believe these methods can help you really get
Mm-hmm.
over that hump.
Yep.
So, anyways,
Alrighty, so I think we talked this to death.
yeah, I know. I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing about decision making, and we're making the
Right.
decision right now to end this topic. So we'll be bringing another topic in next week. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, follow podcasts, and like John says, every time we start an episode, give us suggestion ideas. So until next time, I'm John. He's John. We're out.
Yep.
Dogman is streaming.
Did it?
Maybe.
It's okay. If we're still here, you guys will just hear the extra.